I remember the exact weight of the cardboard box they gave me to pack my things. It was light. 15 years of work, and it all fit in a box that weighed less than a bag of groceries. A framed photo of my daughter's kindergarten graduation. A coffee mug that said "World's Okay-est Accountant." A birthday gift from the team. A stress ball shaped like a calculator. And a small cactus named Gerald that had survived on my desk longer than 3 of my supervisors. That was it. 15 years at Braden Associates, a mid-size accounting firm in Boise, Idaho, reduced to a box I could carry with one hand. My name is Nora Whitfield. I'm 43 years old. And on a Wednesday morning in March, my boss, Leonard Braden, founder, president, and self-appointed moral authority of the firm, called an all-hands meeting in the main conference room, stood in front of 40 employees, and announced that I had been stealing from client trust accounts. "We've discovered discrepancies totaling $12,400 in the Morrison Trust account," Leonard said, his voice carrying the practiced gravity of a man who enjoyed the sound of his own authority. "The transactions trace back to Nora Whitfield's login credentials. Effective immediately, she is terminated. Security will escort her out." 40 faces turned to look at me. Some shocked. Some uncomfortable. A few, the ones who'd never liked me, who resented that I'd been promoted over them, with expressions that looked uncomfortably close to satisfaction. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but my voice wasn't. "Leonard, this is a mistake. I didn't take anything. The evidence says otherwise. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." A security guard, Derek, who I'd chatted with every morning for a decade, who I'd brought homemade banana bread every Christmas, took my arm gently and walked me to my office. He wouldn't look me in the eye. "I'm sorry, Nora," he whispered. "I don't believe it either. But I have to do my job." "I know, Derek." I packed Gerald the cactus last. Carefully, like he was the most valuable thing I owned. In that moment, he might have been. The 6 months that followed were the darkest of my life. Leonard didn't just fire me. He reported the theft to the Idaho State Board of Accountancy, triggering an investigation that suspended my CPA license. Without a license, I couldn't work in my field. Without work, I couldn't pay my mortgage. Without a mortgage payment, the bank started sending letters with words like default and foreclosure. I applied to 3 firms. All 3 called Leonard for a reference. All 3 rejected me within 48 hours. In a city the size of Boise, word travels fast in the accounting community. By April, I was radioactive. Nobody would hire the woman who stole from a client trust account. My daughter, Abigail, was 16. Old enough to understand that something was very wrong, young enough to still believe her mother when I said, "It's going to be okay, baby. We'll figure it out." I wasn't sure I believed it myself. My ex-husband, Craig, was useless. We'd been divorced for 7 years. His contribution to the crisis was a text message. "Heard what happened. That's rough. Let me know if Abigail needs anything." He didn't follow up. The person who saved me was my neighbor, Ruth. 68 years old, retired librarian, owner of 4 cats, and an opinion about everything. Ruth showed up at my door 3 days after the firing with a casserole and a question. "Did you do it?" "No." "Good. Eat the casserole. Then we're going to figure this out." Ruth became my anchor. She watched Abigail when I had meetings with lawyers I couldn't afford. She drove me to the unemployment office. She proofread my appeal letters to the state board. And when I had a panic attack at 2 a.m. one Tuesday in May, convinced I was going to lose the house, she sat on my kitchen floor with me and talked about her cats until my breathing normalized. "Felix has a urinary tract infection," she said calmly while I hyperventilated into a paper bag. "The vet wants $400 for antibiotics." I told him for $400 I could buy Felix a new urinary tract. I laughed. It was the first time I'd laughed in 2 months. My lawyer, a young woman named Priya Sharma, who took my case pro bono because she'd been wrongfully terminated herself 5 years earlier, filed a formal challenge to the investigation. "The evidence they're relying on is circumstantial," Priya explained. "Login credentials don't prove physical presence. Anyone with your password could have made those transactions. Did anyone else have access to your login? Every supervisor has a master access log. Leonard could access any employee's credentials through the admin system. Who else? His daughter, Meredith. She works in IT. She manages the credential system." Priya's eyes narrowed. "Tell me about Meredith." Meredith Braden was 26 years old. She'd been hired at the firm 2 years ago, straight out of college, into a position that was created specifically for her. Director of Information Systems was her title, which sounded impressive until you realized that a firm of 40 people doesn't need a Director of Information Systems. It needs someone who can fix the printer and reset passwords. Meredith was smart, entitled, and deeply insecure about being seen as the boss's daughter who got her job through nepotism, which she was. She compensated by working longer hours than anyone and by being aggressively territorial about her domain. I'd always been kind to her. Maybe that's why she never looked at me during the all-hands meeting. Maybe that's why she was the only person who didn't turn to stare. Or maybe it was guilt. The investigation dragged on through summer. The state board was slow, methodical, bureaucratic. Meanwhile, my savings evaporated. I started doing freelance bookkeeping for small businesses. Technically legal since my license was suspended, not revoked, and bookkeeping doesn't require a CPA. The pay was a fraction of my old salary, but it kept the lights on. Abigail started working at a sandwich shop after school. I told her she didn't have to. She said, "Mom, you'd do it for me. Let me do it for you." 16 years old, and she was already braver than most adults I knew. The break came in September. Not from Priya's investigation. Not from the state board. From the Boise Police Department. A young woman had walked into the downtown precinct at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning and asked to speak with a detective. She was well-dressed, visibly shaking, and carrying a folder full of printed documents. Her name was Meredith Braden. She confessed everything. The $12,400 had been taken by her. Not for personal gain, at least not directly. Meredith had been covering for her father. Leonard Braden had been bleeding client trust accounts for 3 years to fund a lifestyle his legitimate income couldn't support. A lake house in McCall. A boat. Monthly payments to a woman in Spokane that Leonard's wife didn't know about. Meredith discovered the discrepancies 6 months before my firing. Instead of reporting her father, she tried to cover the trail by redistributing the losses across multiple accounts and using different employee credentials to make the transactions look scattered and attributable. She used my login because I was the most senior accountant, because my access permissions were the broadest, and because, as she told the detective, Nora was the most trustworthy person in the company. I knew people would be shocked, but eventually the investigation would clear her. I thought I could buy enough time to convince my dad to pay it back. She was wrong. The investigation didn't clear me. It crushed me. "Why are you confessing now?" the detective asked. Meredith's answer was recorded in the police report. Priya read it to me over the phone that afternoon, and I had to sit down on my kitchen floor. The same spot where Ruth had told me about Felix's urinary tract infection. Because my legs stopped working. Because I drove past Nora's house last week. She was mowing her own lawn. She never had to mow her own lawn before. She used to hire a service. Her daughter was washing a car in the driveway that I knew wasn't theirs. It was too old, too beat up. And I realized that I didn't buy time. I stole it. I stole time from a woman who did nothing wrong, and I gave that time to my father, who did everything wrong. Leonard Braden was arrested on Thursday. The charges: embezzlement, fraud, and falsifying corporate records. His bail was set at $75,000. His wife posted it. Then she filed for divorce. Meredith was charged as an accessory. She cooperated fully with the prosecution and received a plea deal. 2 years probation, community service, and permanent disbarment from handling financial systems. My CPA license was reinstated within 3 weeks. The state board sent a letter that used the word exonerated 4 times in 2 paragraphs, as if repetition could undo 6 months of destroyed reputation. Braden Associates offered me my job back. The new interim director, a woman named Catherine who'd been my colleague for 12 years, called personally. "Nora, we want you back. Name your terms." I thought about it for exactly 1 day. "No," I said. "But thank you." I didn't go back because I didn't need to. During those 6 months of freelance bookkeeping, I'd built something unexpected, a client base. 12 small businesses who trusted me with their books, who'd hired me when nobody else would, who didn't care about accusations because they'd seen my work firsthand. I opened my own firm in October. Whitfield Accounting. 2 rooms in a strip mall between a nail salon and a sandwich shop. The same sandwich shop where Abigail worked. She made me a sign for the door using supplies from her art class. It was crooked and the letters were uneven, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Meredith wrote me a letter. Handwritten 6 pages. I read it once. It was genuine, raw, and deeply remorseful. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked for understanding, which is a smaller and more honest request. I wrote back. 2 sentences. I understand why you did it. I hope you never do it again. Leonard Braden's trial is scheduled for February. I'll be called as a witness. I'll sit in that courtroom and look at the man who stood in front of 40 people and called me a thief, and I'll tell the truth. Not for revenge. Not for satisfaction. Because the truth is what I had when everything else was taken away, and it's the only thing that never let me down. Ruth brought another casserole last week. This time it was for celebration, not consolation. Gerald looks good, she said, nodding at the cactus on my new desk. Tough little guy. Yeah, I said, touching one of his spines gently. He survived everything. So did you. So did I. Sometimes the people who destroy your life aren't strangers. They're the people you trusted. And sometimes the people who save it aren't heroes. They're neighbors with casseroles and daughters who make crooked signs and retired librarians with opinions about cat medication. What would you do if someone you trusted framed you for something you didn't do? Could you forgive them? Would you want to? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever been the Gerald, the small, tough thing that survived against all odds, hit like and subscribe.